Recording. Hi, good evening, and welcome to the February 5th, 2025 meeting of the Needham Finance Committee. Sorry, this meeting is being conducted in a hybrid fashion. And there's an opportunity in the beginning of the meeting for citizens to request to address the Finance Committee, not necessarily to participate in an ongoing dialogue. So with that, I will open the meeting. And are there any citizens to request the finance? I want to address the finance committee. No? Seeing none, we'll move to the next item on the agenda to approve the minutes of January 22nd.
Yep.
Has everybody had a chance to review those?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know which copy I reviewed, but I did have one minor comment, but we talked about the school budget, we talked about the budget being 6.8 million, it was just the increase, so it was 6.8. I think it's on page 4. It's the only clarification.
Okay. So do we need to modify, change that and then redistribute, or
No, I think
I
we,
think it just was subject
can be,
to.
right?
yes,
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of our January 22nd meeting as amended by Barry's comment.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
But Joe and Karen, you weren't in that meeting, right?
Oh, correct, yes.
And the next item on the agenda is first the CPC administration, and John and Ally, I know visited that. You didn't have that meeting?
I've had a lot of meetings.
I'm like, I emailed about that and we never got it scheduled. so.
Okay, well, the great thing is the CPC administration is here. You are just going to discuss it. Okay.
Yeah, 25.
There really isn't a lot to discuss, is there?
We're open for questions.
So I can just briefly explain it. The budget is remaining the same as it was last year. $82,000, which is well under the 5% maximum that we are allowed to allocate towards the administration budget. We have it, there's no changes. We have it broken down 30,300 for staff support, which is primarily Lauren here, who really oversees the committee and works with the minutes and everything and the agendas and helping running the meetings, because I'm over here on Wednesday nights. The professional and technical services, we allocated about $40,000. We've hired a consultant again this year, the same as last year. And so this is just kind of in there if we are seeing any sort of big projects that we don't feel that we have the technical expertise to handle on our own. So a good example is the housing projects that we have. This is kind of allocated for any sort of consulting services we may need in that field. And then the typical postage, legal notices, signs, and the Community Preservation Coalition fees that we pay every year.
So the consultants that you hire, that's an annual item, right? Or, I mean, what has that looked like in the past?
It has been an annual item. This is the second year. We're kind of, with the uptick in housing applications and the complexity of them, we're keeping this in the budget this year just in case there's another housing application. Typically they have been coming every year. Like this year we have 2. We had one that we were unexpected. Well, actually both were unexpected, so.
And did you fully expend the 40,000?
No, it was 20,000, I believe.
You spent 20 of 40, or you only requested 20?
We spent 20 of 40.
So if you only spent 20 of 40, why do you need another 40 this year?
It's really looking at, what could come in front of us. We didn't know how many housing applications, for whatever reason, luckily, I think because some of the knowledge base was there last year. The budget that we got from our consultant this year was again $20,000, even though the number of applications did double. So we were, I think, expecting that to come in a little bit higher when we submitted the budget originally.
I mean, I think, isn't the 20, it's not like the 20 remains, it goes into free.
Right.
Right.
Yes, it does
was
roll
given-
back.
given back, right.
And where do you all stand on applications and timing and when we're gonna see you again with respect to that?
I believe we're gonna see you again on March fifth with respect to the pending projects.
And how many pending projects?
7 currently.
7 currently.
Mhm.
Is that what you're expecting to bring to us or bring to the town is the 7, or you still have to decide?
One of them is, there's still a question of eligibility that we're working with town council. So, we hope to have that resolved in the next week or so. So it's possible that we will come to you with 7. It's possible we'll come to you with 6.
Yeah.
Based on how that plays out.
How much funding do we have available for projects for next year? Think we use a lot of that for the Linden Chambers project or all of it?
Yes. Yes, we did use quite a bit of it, for the Linden Chambers project last year. So we're looking at, with estimated 2026 receipts, we're looking at a community housing reserve of 876,000. Plus a general reserve of a little over 1.2 million.
That's for next year.
Oh, that's for next year.
Yeah, so currently, when we funded the Linden Chambers project last year, we wiped out the entirety of the community housing bucket that was available at that time in May. But at the town meeting, we also then reappropriated 22% of our estimated receipts back into the community housing bucket, so we have another 872,000. We do have $106,000 currently in the historic resources reserve. That's dedicated solely to historic preservation projects. We have 2,800,000 in open space, but again, that's solely reserved for only open space projects, so it really we can't use that on any of the projects that we have in front of us this year. We have 87,000 in our general reserve, which is less than we normally have this time of year, because at the special town meeting in October, we use a portion of that to go towards the tennis court project. And then we have almost $3.5 million in free cash that we are able to certify. That usually is a significantly higher number, but it kind of disappears at the end of the year and gets transferred back into the general reserves until it's certified. So it's always an ongoing, we always have revenue coming in each year. It's just when we can appropriate it.
That begs the question of the 7 applications, do you have enough money within those buckets to fund all of them, or is there gonna be competition?
We do not have enough.
Using that term, competition, but
We only have one project in front of us that is eligible for historic resources. The rest are basically competing for the same funding. There's 2 huge community housing reserve projects that are well over the amount. It's 3 million and right now 5.6 million individually, which we don't have total. And then the rest of them are competing for the general reserve and the free cash.
So would we reasonably use the consulting fees if we don't have the funds to actually pay for the housing projects this year?
Yeah, because the consulting fees help us determine if the project's eligible, if it's a worthwhile project, the feasibility of it.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay, great. Thank you.
good luck with that you're doing, and we'll see you on March 5th. All of it.
Yeah, what they want to present to town meeting.
Got it. So after they've chosen.
Very moving.
Oh, you know what? I'm not gonna say it.
Falling down on the job. Okay,
Sorry about that.
I feel like the John Mitchell, or maybe
Yeah.
because we missed last meeting, I thought it was the other stuff.
yeah, I think it's probably that, because it was always on the agenda, but it's not a big deal. Sure, Tim McDonald would be happy. So Tim, would you want to join us? Join us in Human Services? Uh, Tina and I met with Tim on January 17th at this point, and Karen was kind of listening in. So I just wanted to give you some of the highlights, and then I'm gonna turn it up to you. Because I certainly don't do it justice, you do a lot. And so Health and Human Services is made up of, basically 4 divisions: aging services, public health, veterans, and youth and family services. So, some of the highlights in aging services, they increased hybrid programming, increased programming in general, increased hybrid programming. They have increased and really advertised, I guess, the Shine program. So there's, serving health insurance needs for everybody, what Shine means, and they're seeing increased demand because of the increased outreach. And then in their transportation services, they have a fleet of vehicles that they use to transport some of the seniors, and they also received a grant for a grant-funded program for a taxi company, and that grant is being rolled into this next year with Uber and Lyft, is that correct?
That is correct.
So in general, the cost, this significant cost increase in aging services are really food service because the programming and demand is increasing. And then in all of their divisions, and we're seeing this in all the department budgets, an increase in technology costs because they have to now bear the cost of replacement for some of their keyboards and screens and Dave's looking quizzically at that comment, but
I swear it was based on a memo that I found, so.
so if that's not right, we'll just adjust the budget, but that's what we were told.
Right.
And in terms of public health, you know, HNSS has played a huge role in vaccination, communications, advertising for vaccines. And in their public health division, and you'll see this in youth and family services and actually in aging services, there was, and there are 3 across health and human services, there are 3 ARPA funded positions that were half funded by ARPA for this year and half in the budget, and they'll be fully in the budget for next year. So though their salary increase is 9%, part of that is the second half of the ARPA funded positions, one of which is an epidemiologist and a half of a public health nurse. So in terms of veterans administrations, and I have to say, you can explain this better, Tim. They provide, you know, benefits to many types of veterans benefits and celebrations of holidays dedicated to veterans. And then they do this veterans services and consortium with Metro West Group. And it seems like the net increase in government charges was $10,000 and a decrease in veteran benefits costs from 25 to 17, but the net increase was about $3,500. And then finally, youth and family services, they provide a very robust program for youth and family mental health, and obviously we've all seen that the acuity of needs has grown dramatically since COVID. And they, in partnership with the Needham Resiliency Network, have worked really closely to provide training on mental health first aid. This is one of their very significant initiatives for the last year. And it requires training all the 10th graders, excuse me, in mental health first aid. And that required about 90 hours of training to do that. And right now they have trained 2 classes of 10th graders, right? So 50% of the high school.
We've trained one so far. We're working on the second one this year.
Okay, thank you. In terms of high level, as I said, salaries increased 9%, but again, half of that was for the 3 ARPA funded positions that are in the budget, full for this year. Expenses increased by 4%. Most of that is really due to technology expenses. And so the net increase year over year for this budget was 8.2%, but again, part of that are the ARPA positions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tim, and thank you for forwarding that information to us. I neglected to mention that obviously Health and Human Service has played a huge role in the opioid settlement, utilizing the opioid settlement funds. So Tim can talk about that.
So happy to be here. For those that don't know, this is Sarah. She's the Director of Youth and Family Services. And so in addition to the operating budget, we wanted to talk to you a little bit about the 2 sort of separate things. One is the Children's Hospital community host funding, which supports 2 clinicians in Sarah's team. And the other is the opioid settlement funding, which Carol was alluding to just a moment ago. Carol did a nice job sort of highlighting the role of the department. I would just add, on the public health division side, we get about $1.3 million a year in grants. Aging services, it varies a little bit. This year, it's a little over 400,000 in grants. Youth and Family Services gets a couple of small grants each year as well. And we do rely on a series of revolving funds for some of our activities, including the traveling meals program, senior transportation, and immunizations. I'm happy to sort of dive into anything you'd like to tackle. As Carol mentioned, the salary line is up. It looks like it's up as if there was a new request. It is the second year of that 2-year part where the ARPA positions became half operating budget funded in 25, and the intent is full operating budget funded in 26. So happy to sort of answer those, or if you'd like us to present about the Children's Hospital and the opioid, we could do that too. I don't know if you want to take the operating first and then do those.
Maybe if you.
Okay. Great. So the expense line increases that Carol referenced, the town worked with the IT department to come up with recommendations for replacement schedules for technology items, which are supposed to now be included in departmental budgets. The replacement cycle that we used for HHS was, I believe, 4 years for a we used the replacement cycle the town gave, but it was 4 years for a laptop. I think it was 2 years or 3 years for a mobile device, and monitors. It was, monitors can last a long time or not. We built in sort of a 4-year replacement cycle for all of those. So if there are 12 monitors in a division, we projected that we would need 3 replaced each year. So there would be essentially 4 years that the full cycle would be for replacement. Same thing with laptops. Grant funded laptops are funded out of grants, so they're not included in the costs that we're putting to the operating budget.
In the schedule, it was in our book of the different, staff members in the divisions of health and human services.
Mhm.
Where it says like grant funded through June 30, 2027.
Yep.
There's a whole series of them I highlight on my
Yep.
sheet. Are those grants, federal grants, state grants, a combination, sort of looking ahead, do we see any of those maybe being imperiled?
So we're,
And if they did go away, would I be correct that to keep these positions on, would have to fund them not from the operating budget as opposed to relying on grant funds for that?
sure, well. So those, we have 3-year contracts. We're in the first year of a 3-year contract. The majority of the funding for those, and I think we're talking about the Public Health Excellence Shared Services and the Regional Training Hub, is ARPA funding that the state had and CDC FIG, Public Health Infrastructure Grant funding. The state has all of that money in hand already. So we think it is very secure. I think there is still a great deal of uncertainty. Last Monday, Tuesday, asking state and federal partners what was going on was interesting, just because they would either speculate and have wildly different speculations, two people in the same department, or they wouldn't say anything. But we are relatively confident that those are stable. One of the things that I've said to Kate and Katie and Dave, and to the finance committee, I'm always happy to make the case for why we need to bring in grant funding into the operating budget. Except when we're doing an example where Needham is the host for a regional grant. So where Needham is getting 100% of the benefit of the grant, that sounds great to me, and I'd love to have more of it. If Needham is the host and it's getting a portion of the benefit, but the benefit is spread around for public health excellence, for example, a 4-town region, for Shine, a 25-town region, it's not really feasible for me to come in and say Needham gets 1/25 of the benefit of this, but I'd really like 100% of the salary. That's just, I'm bold, I'm not that bold. So those grants, if they went away, we would have to lay the people off, cancel those contracts that are in place, that sort of thing.
Are you just referencing the training hub ones at the bottom, or can you differentiate? There's 6 that say they're ending in 2027.
I gotta be honest, I'm not sure which page you're on.
Page 29.
There's
289.
administrative specialist, environmental health agent, regional environmental health agent, regional public health nurse,
Yep.
regional training hub manager, and a division manager.
Yep, so all of those are public health excellence, shared services, or training hub, regional training hub. So all of them are funded by a combination of what I said, state ARPA money or CDC FIG, Public Health Infrastructure Grant funding. So that applies to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, all 6
So
positions.
if the grant funding dried up, you're saying you would not recommend?
I think I always love to do services. That's why I'm in the role I am. And if Needham is getting 100% of the benefit of a grant, I'd love to try to make my case for why we should continue those functions. But for the training hub, for example, there are 60 towns in the region for which we are responsible for providing public health training. Needham gets 1/60th of that benefit. If the grant went away, Needham would be paying 100% of that cost. That math doesn't work. So no, those are not the type of grants that I would want to try to continue. There are grants that we have that are 100% beneficial to the town. Although there are fewer of them. A lot of the funding, especially in the public health side, is moving towards those regional models.
And how would so in a regional model like that, if you determined after the 3-year period that it's still beneficial, you would then what as a consortium? Reapply for another grant, or how would that mechanics work?
Reapply for another grant. In some cases, the application process for some of these are minimal. The state is really pushing this. So as long as it wasn't a very competitive application, right? Did you spell your name right? Did you submit it by the deadline? You got the funding. But if the funding is in place longer term, I think that's something we'd love to continue. I think there's a lot of uncertainty, as the state legislature dedicated 200 million of state ARPA to public health, state public health. And that's funding a lot of different things. And it's tied up in contracts and it'll be there until ARPA ends. But there's a big question at the local and state level of, okay, when that goes away, what money is coming after it? And is there going to be state money? One of the things that's not very easy to do on Beacon Hill is go from a relatively modest appropriation to a much larger one. So we don't need much money right now because there's ARPA, which is great, but then we need 15 million next year. I'm speaking for the public health system, not for Needham
Mhm.
specifically. That's a much harder ask to make. So I think there is long-term uncertainty. But that is 2.5 years worth of funding still.
So Tim, let me just, if I understand it, so I'm looking at the schedule and there's a position. Regional environmental health agent with the salary next to it.
Yep.
Am I hearing you correctly that that person is doing work for Needham and for other towns as well?
Yes,
And we're paying 100% of that person's salary?
the grant is paying 100%.
Granted.
I'm saying it would be very hard for me to say the grant went away. I'd really love you to fund this when Needham can't pay 100% of the costs and get 25% of the benefit.
Okay, all right, so,
Right now, Needham gets 25% of the benefit and doesn't pay any of the cost because it's funded by a grant. So that's,
so the big decision collectively is gonna be if those grants go away at the end of 27. What we're gonna be able to do or not do with respect to those positions where. You know, we have it here now. So is that person actually a town of Needham employee?
yep, they have an ID badge, they have a town email, they spend roughly a quarter of their time in Needham. Slightly more because they have desks here, but yeah, they work in Medfield, Dover and Sherburne as well.
So we have some overhead costs associated with all of these positions because we house them here.
There are certainly, we do get administrative overhead and fringe benefits taken out. Historically, the town had not, and Dave could speak better to where this originated, but the town historically wouldn't take fringe benefits out of grants where salary was funded because it wanted the full amount of the grant to go for the grant purpose. Because we started getting fairly high dollar value grants and they were these regional grants where Needham is sort of the host and is providing services for a multi-town region. We have begun the process and started for the first time in fiscal 24 of taking 100% of the fringe benefit costs for each grant funded employee, whether full-time or part-time, out of the grants. So that it would cost Needham a little bit to get a grant previously. The way we're doing it now, it doesn't cost Needham anything.
And what is Medfield and Dover pay?
They don't pay anything. They're getting benefit for free because it's grant funded.
What about the substance abuse prevention program coordinators? You mentioned those are grant funded. Is that an ongoing grant like that is that in the Children's Hospital or the opioid settlement?
It's not. These are, at least these folks on this page are all public health people. So that is what's called a Mass Call 3. So it's funded by the Bureau of Substance and Addiction Services at Mass DPH. It's funded by federal substance use block grant money, which again is a federal pass-through. That grant runs through the end of this year, and then it'll be a question of whether it's renewed. We've had it for 5 years, and we had a predecessor grant for 3 years before that. They sort of changed the name, but gave it to the same group of people. So that's a $250,000 grant, for example.
Are there any more questions on the operating budget? Because maybe we can talk about the opioid.
Sure. Do you mind actually maybe doing the Children's Hospital
Oh,
first, if that's
sure,
okay, and then we'll
great.
jump to opioid?
So we were able to hire a community-based training coordinator and a community-based clinician. They have been working very hard. If you've stopped by the library recently, they are set up shop at a number of different locations. Trying to get the community involved and just making sure their presence is out there. the community-based clinician has been doing community-based work. So he's doing clinical work out in the community. He's doing some work here. He's been running programs. So we've been able to get our wait list down pretty significantly by having these two new positions. The community-based training coordinator has been able to work with Park and Rec. The library staff did a training with them, is helping with the teen mental health first aid rollout, and has been able to develop a number of different various curriculums to help with various themes we're seeing in terms of mental health. So they've been very, very active in the community. They just started in the end of June, beginning of July, and have made significant progress. If you have any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them.
And as a reminder, we have a host community agreement with Children's Hospital. There was $400,000 that was appropriated by town meeting, and then once the building is opened and occupied, $200,000 a year is provided by Children's to the town for youth mental health
For how long?
in
In
perpetuity.
perpetuity?
Or I should double check that. I don't know if there's like a 25 or 50-year sunset, but it's not a 3-year sunset for sure.
As long as they're existing in Needham.
But the amount never changes.
It doesn't, so that buys less over time.
Do you have measurements where you say they're making a lot of progress, or like, what are your kind of key performance indicators on how we're, I know that the mental health issue continues to become sort of greater and more prominent, so do we have actual results?
Yeah, they're gonna put something together in May. They're tracking all kinds of data, how many people they're seeing, they're having drop-in hours, they're doing clinical outreach, so all of that stuff they are measuring and tracking. So we'll be able to give you something more definitive then.
Tracking the amount of people saved, but is it helping? Do you have a way to measure, I guess, how everybody's doing?
Well, how do you measure success?
Yeah, how do you measure
Yeah.
success?
So we have a various number of tools that we can use to measure that. We sometimes use the BPRSC, which is a tracking tool that we do at the beginning and end treatment to see if progress has been made. So that's one of the tools that we use.
And use for your, or individual or group clinical appointments. You don't bill the individual's insurance, right? So this is completely. And is that fairly standard in other communities? That's just how it's done, or?
Yeah, so youth and family services in the various regions, most of them do not bill insurance.
Largely, that's the administrative burden of doing insurance billing is not something usually municipalities have experience in, so it requires an investment in staffing to be able to start recouping money. Arlington does, for example, right?
Is there like a tipping point in terms of how many appointments we're doing that we might look at what the benefit of bringing someone in to process claims? Is it
So
sort of an actual?
you might know Arlington's staffing model, but last I heard they had 3.5 administrative staff to do the billing. So 3.5 FTE, but they have a mansion in Arlington Center and 25 plus clinicians. We don't have that much space physically. I do think that every couple of years, Sarah does sort of look at the numbers again. The Youth Commission has sort of stated as its policy priority that they don't want sort of any barriers to access for care. And that's something that Needham has sort of been very gracious in providing a free service. But it's something worth looking at. We do bill on the public health side for vaccine administration, but that's a lot simpler because it's essentially, did you give this shot? Yes. And keep track of the lot number for the vaccine. And we do outsource that to, they've changed the name so many times. We have a company that we outsource and they take a portion of the total costs. And so we get back like 75 cents on the dollar, basically.
And there's no company like that you could outsource the same type of billing model that it would always be net positive.
Not to my knowledge, but we can continue to look into that.
Just curious. And how do you guys partner with the schools on this in terms of like, I know they obviously are doing a lot of mental health caseload. I think we heard about it being, they can't even fully staff all the
Mhm.
needs. So
Mhm.
how do you guys compare to the amount of caseload, and can you somehow create efficiencies? I don't know.
Yeah, we partner with the school a lot. It's, the work is just different. The schools, student has on their IEP, they need counseling service. They get a 30-minute session, say once a week. The amount of work that can be done in that once a week session is very limited. You don't want to go into a trauma history during a school day potentially. So we partner with them a lot. I think that we run a lot of groups in the schools, so try to relieve their counseling department in that way. We're always in communication with their counseling. They're calling us for referrals. We're sometimes going in the school after school hours. They're allowing us to have space to see students in the school systems. So we try to partner with them. The work, it's just different. The depth that you can go into in the clinical work, the amount that can be done in a school day versus what we can do outpatient. The groups that we're able to run that can kind of run more ongoing, if the work is it's just different, but we do partner with them a ton. They've allowed us to go in and teach teen mental health first aid in their health and wellness classes. That's been a huge initiative. So we work with them really closely. But yeah, they are very bogged down and we kind of share that burden with them.
I don't know if there are other questions, if you want me to go on to opioid.
Yeah,
Um,
just where you are from.
Sure, so opioid, we have been working with the town's HR department because HR determined that the scope that we wanted to use for the recovery coach wasn't appropriate for just us to add on hours to a staff member. We had to actually create a job position. It had to be graded and scored and approved and added to the Schedule A. It had to be posted. People had to apply. Interviews were conducted yesterday, and we anticipate there will be a hiring recommendation made by the end of the week. So needless to say, our spending has lagged because we had hoped that we would be able to, God bless you, make, add on the delta from a part-time staff to a full-time staff paying from the recovery, from the opioid fund. So we have been having the recovery coach work, but 5 or 8 hours a week instead of, 20 hours or plus a week. So spending has been somewhat reduced. We are continuing sort of the progress we had talked about, or the plan we had talked about last year, when we have sort of applied for the money in May, town meeting that approved it. So it was a recovery coach. It was a couple of community placements, including placements in business settings for sandboxes. So Narcan reversal kits posted usually with an AED, alongside an AED. We included sort of an infographic, I think, in the memo about the recovery coach and the work that she has done. Interesting that, we've had, I guess the age cohort was higher than I assumed for folks that were in recovery. We do have as we noted, a dual Recovery Anonymous meeting that meets every week at Cath. Not huge, but very helpful for the people that do attend it. And we included our action plan and logic model with our thoughts for the year ahead.
Great. Any other questions? Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
It's always a different ballgame. You don't have DSR fours.
Yes, I've noticed that.
Next is the library. And Karen, do you wanna
Yeah,
provide?
I can give a presentation on it. So Karen and I met with Rob, I think back on January 9th, to go over the library budget. Couple of highlights that were very encouraging for me to hear, that the library usage continues to be increasing. I think some of the things we talked about is, visits are up, checkouts are up. There's been an increase and
in programming and attendance of some of the programming, particularly the children programs. We also talked a little bit about the use of some digital technologies, particularly OneDrive, Overdrive Advantage, and we'll talk a little bit more about how that is playing into the budget. And the other thing we spoke a little bit about was the upcoming program, the multi-year renovation of the library in phase one. Assuming that funding gets approved at town meeting, that would kick off later this year to expand the team room, I think, by 4x. Yeah, all right. Overall, I think we saw that the budget year over year was going up by 3.7%. A lot of that is driven by salary and wage and which are scheduled step increases. I'll also have Rob and the team talk a little bit about staffing. There are some DSR fours in here that we'll talk through. I know last year, I think there were some open positions, and so there was, I think, a budget return because those positions weren't filled, but I think there's been some progress on filling those. So yeah, I think two other things I wanted to talk about that we spoke about. The Overdrive Advantage, I think historically that system and program has been funded from state funding. But it's proven to be such a useful resource that in this year's fiscal year budget, the funding for that has been proposed to move over to the operating budget. And then maybe I'll have Rob and the team talk about the DSR fours. There's a couple of positions, one full-time, one half-time to help with some of the outreach and youth programs. Maybe I'll leave it at that, just for the overview, and then maybe turn it over to you guys.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay.
If I can introduce, you might remember Jenna White, our administrative specialist from last year. She came with Dimitri, the interim director, to present. And then you certainly don't know Diana Fendler because she started with us on January 22nd. She's our new assistant director and is one of those positions that we have filled since July 1st. It's been like 7 months of constant interviews, and HR, they're our best friends. So just to follow up on that, we only have one part-time position that's unfilled right now. So we had a reference supervisor also join us in January, so we're really excited. So we had a lot of salary money returned in FY24, and that'll probably be the same in FY25, just to make Dave happy for that, more free cash for next year. But as of now, at the beginning of February, we are almost fully staffed, which is great because we need everybody on board to continue to deliver for Needham. The numbers for FY24 were really exciting. Not just the number of checkouts, which I think is what normally we all think about libraries and books and reading and whatnot, but the number of visitors to our library increased by 11%. Program attendance, not just for kids, but teen attendance increased 49%. We also saw an increase for adult programming attendance. So it's really more and more the place to go, the place to meet, to hang out. We'll get to phase one, but at 2:44 p.m. Monday through Thursday, not so much on Friday because it's the weekend. We have upwards of 100 teens who cross the street from the high school and use us, and they use us in the most amazing way, which is studying. They're like well behaved, and it's fantastic, which makes phase one really exciting to bring that improvement for them in our space. But to go over the salary part of our FY26 request first, that is a 3.9% increase over FY25. And that's just connected to step increases. There's no other strange increase there. On the expense side, we do have a 6.6% request over FY25. A lot of that is driven by what Joe mentioned, the ask that we move the overdrive advantage spending of $26,000 from library state aid to the operating budget. So in the past 10 years, we've seen overdrive advantage, which you may know as patrons as Libby. Libby is overdrive. It's the number one. Overdrive is the global Amazon for libraries for digital collections, and we purchase licenses to ebooks and e-audio books for our patrons to use. Sometimes we do that purchasing through the Minuteman Library Network, which we're a member of, but the Advantage accounts are set up for individual libraries to add additional licenses to their collections for their patrons. And so there's such a demand that we have an Advantage account that we've been funding through the library state aid account. 10 years ago in FY15, we had about 21,000 checkouts from Overdrive, our patrons. Last year was over 112,000. 3,700 people used, through 3,700 Needham residents used Overdrive Libby last year. Along with that popularity, our holds have increased a lot. So in July of 2018, we had 1,700 holds. People are just waiting for licenses because the most publishers only allow one copy, one user. So, you know, if you check out an ebook, it doesn't really make sense because it's digital. We all have it at the same time, but this is how it is for libraries. If you check it out, everybody else has to wait till you're done and you return it. So there were 1,700 people waiting July 2018, that month, for something. Last June, there was over 6,000 people waiting, 6,000 holds.
But what's the
So-
average
$10
day of like a whole, like the average days on
The-
hold?
It's around 50 days.
50.
Yeah. So, yeah, so it's popular and we're happy to see the checkouts increase, but the holds are increasing and we had over 700 new users to Libby last year, which is amazing because it's not new, but we still see that growth. And so we're still getting message out to new people who are shifting all or some of their reading to digital. We've had Overdrive Advantage for a long time now, and it's a huge success, and we're happy about that. And so the request is just if we could incorporate that into our operating budget, the materials line item where we have, you know, the money we use to purchase books and other parts of our collection that our patrons use. That would just be great.
But what would the state aid isn't going away, is it? I mean, so what would you do with those freed up dollars?
Right. So we have some phases coming up. So what we have done, what the trustees have done this past summer is to approve emergency funding in case there are cost overruns related to phase one. And so that is something we may continue as we go to phase two, phase three, phase four. In addition, freeing up these funds will allow us to do try some more innovative or new services or collections for the library.
So you're gonna use the state aid to do more innovative, different things.
Yes, as well as have a cushion moving forward with the renovation phases.
The state aid. that
Right.
cushion.
It's not a lot of money, but you
Yeah.
know, anything we can do to help in case there are cost overruns,
Right,
that
would it make sense to keep using this as this state aid and then come to us if there are overruns as opposed to adding this to the operating budget? With Scott.
okay. Part of that would
By
involve
moving
Hank, so.
to the operating budget, and I mean, I get it because you've been using this for a while, so effectively it is an important part of your operation. I'm not suggesting that it isn't, but by moving it from state aid to the operating budget, doesn't do anything with alleviating the holds, right?
Correct, right, no,
And
that
it-
data just is showing that it's an established. Part of our collections and what we do.
But you
Oh, yeah.
couldn't, I guess can you? Would you buy more licenses if part of this was in the operating budget and part of it was funded by? the
Right, it would
state?
free up for us to make that determination in the future if we wanted to use additional funding beyond the 26,000 from library state aid to address the whole, or to add more licenses to the collection.
And this is by book license, you're not paying by user or by checkout, you're paying by books, so you're trying to add more, books. If there's a big weight on like a new popular book, you buy more,
Right,
that Needham residents can read it faster.
right. The Advantage count, most of this money is spent based on the holds list that we go through and purchase in order to make the wait shorter for Needham patrons. After our licenses are used by Needham patrons, other patrons in other Minuteman library can use them, or across the state and vice versa.
Do you have, I see you don't have any write-up, but do you have a summary of what your state aid has been over the past couple of years? And then what the library trust fund balances are, and what those have been used for?
Yep, I can get you the specifics
Okay.
and talk to it in general now. So the trust fund spending which is for this calendar year that just ended, calendar year 24, was for materials for professional development and dues for the Mass Library Trustees Association. So material spending is crucial for us to use trust funds, as well as the library state aid and monies we get from the Friends during July and August when we're setting up our state contracts. We don't want to wait until September, October to start purchasing new materials again. So we use that funding, which is available July 1st, to continue to curate the collection and build the collection. So that would continue, and then we supplement the small professional development line item we have in the operating budget with funds from the trust funds, which will be presenting Tuesday nights the plan to the trustees for calendar year 25 for the trust fund spending.
So if you can.
I
get
can
us the-
send you.
Send us the information on.
Yeah, the library state aid plan, the next one, we won't receive our second payment of library state aid until March or April. So that plan hasn't been established yet, but I can send you the plan that was approved in June,
Right.
the most recent one.
Thank you.
So as you can see on the budget statement, there are a number of lines that are decreased and some that are increased. I don't know if there are specific questions about those, but we went through all of the deductions are real deductions that we can make without affecting library operations or the services that we provide to our patrons. As you can see in materials, also we are decreasing the print publication line item by 3,000, our AV line item by 5,000, and want to move that $8,000 to our physical books line item because of the decreasing demand for CDs, DVDs, and print magazines. And it's not unusual for us to be notified on a regular basis that print magazines are ceasing publication too, which is just forcing our hand to decrease that amount. But we do have a large collection of digital magazines through Libby Overdrive, through the Minuteman, through our assessment to Minuteman. Which is nice. It's not a solution or answer to everybody, to all of our patrons. But we still have over 100 periodical titles in print at the library for use. But usage is not increasing in that part of the collection.
And so Dave, you mentioned that the library does have DSR cores, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
2 personnel and 1 expense.
okay.
So can you move on to those? The first DSR 4 is our priority 1 is a part-time reference librarian young adult specialist. This person would work 98.5 hours a week. This was presented last year. We're presenting it again. This position would become even more important in FY 26 as the new teen room, if funding is approved for construction at Maytown meeting, will be completed in early calendar year 26. And if we had this new part-time person, we would have a teen librarian staffed in that space every evening from 5:30 to 9, and then every Saturday. Currently, we have 1 full-time teen librarian who works 1 evening and 1 Saturday a month, and then a part-time teen librarian works 2 days until 7 p.m. So the new teen room, as Joe mentioned, is going to be 4 times the size of what we have now. We're working our architect UTL just sent off the construction documents to the cost estimators for that final cost estimate before we put together bid documents in anticipation of Maytown meeting. If it's approved, we'll be ready to award that bid.
It is the size of it filled with tables? Is it filled with bookshelves? What will make up the new space?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I think when we come back, I think with Hank to talk about the article for town meeting, we'll get into all the good pictures and stuff. But the area is sort of 4 sections. So there's the current teen room that's behind the glass wall. That's gonna become a quiet study space. So no collections or shelving in there, just study carrels and seating for individual quiet study. We'll put doors on that, so it'll be quiet study only. Right outside that, along the wall that faces Rosemary, is a group study area where we'll have banquettes along the wall and more seating for collaboration and work on projects. There'll be some shelving around the whole space. Right near the staff desk is a lounge area where we'll have a display and seating where teens can be teens when they're not studying. You know, they can hang out and chat and meet each other, and while under supervision by the staff desk, which is located right next to this space. And then in the back area is gonna be a cafe craft area. So place where kids, if they want a snack, they can eat there because it'll be linoleum, marmoleum. I think the flooring is, but it's also a place where Erin can hold programming within the teen room. Right now, we have to book the community room anytime she wants to do a program. So if she has smaller programs, whether they're craft or a book club or whatnot, she'll be able to use that space for that. So there's these 4 distinct areas within it, as well as all of the shelving needed for the collection.
So I guess my question is, I can anticipate your answer. Can the space be utilized without this position?
Oh,
It would be utilized better with this position, but it sounds like it could still sort of function in the manners that you just described, whether this position existed or not.
yes. Yeah, phase 4. When we get there is the reimagining of the reference department, and it pulls the reference desk out from its current location to a more central area where the sight lines are perfectly aligned with the new teen room. That's a few years down the line, but we've also made the teen room glass walls. So even from the current location, we have good sight lines across the space.
Do we know why, I wasn't on FinCom last year, why this request was denied? Last
Yes.
time,
So it wasn't, because of this particular request, it was part of a bunch of, not funding available for various DSR 4s across different departments. So it wasn't like this was selected.
But I also think it was more than last year. I mean, I think this,
Yeah,
I think this request has been for a few years,
Yeah, like, that's true, too.
right?
And the town manager is not recommending. We're not doing any PSF works.
And just so I understand, is this, this part, this particular position, we'll get to the next one, is this, to add more hours to an existing person, or is it a brand new position that would be a part-time position?
Yeah, a brand new one. Yeah, because the hours overlap with
The existing
existing.
person.
but sounds like what's different now though is we're gonna have significantly more dedicated space and increased activity in this area that we haven't had before.
Right. This position would be great, so we can offer more programming
Right.
to the teens. We expect, upwards of 100 now come into the library. Now we're gonna have this new, large, shiny, exciting space. We expect it full all the time, and so additional staff dedicated to, this demographic would be useful and, needed.
Do you have any sense for what % of that space is utilized by students and tutors, like private tutoring that goes on?
Within this footprint,
Yeah, just within, in general. Like, do
in
you think
general,
a majority of your teens are coming in to study with their friends, or they're coming in to meet their chemistry tutor, or do you have a sense for that?
oh, yes. A vast majority, it's with their friends and, or individual study. Yeah, we do certainly have tutors, but most of it is, their friends or their, study partners from the high school.
Or are you looking to charge a user fee for?
Yeah,
Well, I mean, kind of,
Yeah.
well, because it's free office space for the tutors. That's all. I mean, but I said that for years, so.
Yeah. So,
Agrees with me.
with the Board of Library Trustees, this year we've started to review and revise our policies, but also create ones that we need. One of them is a teen room policy, but also we're looking at a tutor policy
Yeah, I
to
think
create.
that would make
because-
sense, just so. It's lovely, it's gonna be great space, obviously, so.
Yeah.
Just a balance, but
And can you speak to the other? The full-time position?
The full-time position is also for the reference department for a reference librarian slash community outreach specialist. This full-time position would allow us to accomplish a lot, what is set forward in our strategic plan and our action plans that are based off of that, to really engage with the community, take the library outside of the building and create more partnerships. Right now, it's outside of the children's department, which like knocks it out of the park with community partnerships with different groups and the schools. Other than that, it's sort of a mishmash of all of us like doing different things. I was just at Wingate this afternoon with the reference librarian, signing people up for library cards. So a dedicated staff member would be able to centralize all of this work and just do so much more than we're able to pay, do based, on if Rob's available or someone else is available. We also turn down opportunities when we're invited to participate because of staffing issues. So, this would be an exciting position. Not just for the library, but for reimagining, or helping Needham residents. Not reimagine, but understand the 21st century public library. Like, we're no longer sitting around waiting for people to enter the building. Like, we have to get out there and find partners and work with the great people like Sarah and her staff, Health and Human Services, or Parks and Rec, the Rail Trail Committee will be working with this spring for Story Walk. All sorts of great things, it's the libraries where you come to learn about anything. So I think we should be everywhere. There's no group or organization in town that we can't make a connection with, that we can't add value to. So this position would be great, but I know Kate hasn't put forward any DSM for us. But as a plug for next year, we'll probably be back with that one. But I understand. We have one last DSR for, which is
I
not,
was just say, I do,
Oh.
we, because I said on the Human Rights Committee, we have partnered with you guys on, every year on Pride. And we also partner with you on various, book club. We've done that a few
Right.
times, which has been unbelievable. So I do appreciate the effort that you guys make in helping us, develop that programming and getting that information out to the community, because it's, it's hard as a small organization, particularly within Needham, for us to get that messaging out. So you've helped us actually develop a lot of visibility.
Thanks.
So, yeah.
We have a DSR 4 on the expense side. As you might know, we have a website that is separate from the town's website, and we have an annual maintenance cost related to the website. It's relatively new. I think we're going into the 3rd or 4th year of the website existing. It's quite popular. We had over 200,000 hits in FY 24 on our website. It's got lots of content besides our event calendar, our databases, our digital collections. It's a gateway to a lot of information. So this $4,835 is the annual cost for our maintenance for Sterling, which is the company that set up and maintains the website.
And that has been paid out of library trust funds to date, or?
Most recently, we have used operating funds to pay it. So what I think is the right thing to do, and to be transparent, is I wanted to put the 4835 into the proper line item, but because that line item in the past has been $0, it is a DSR 4 in my mind. So we submitted DSR 4 in order to populate that line item, even though we have used expense money to pay it recently.
I'm not sure. I
I'm
agree
not
with that.
understanding that.
I mean,
but-
if it's an ordinary additional expense, should be the budget.
Right,
But
so that's
not-
why
but I
we
guess
put
I
this
think of
forward.
DSR 4 is sort of incremental.
It's not incremental, it's been going on for.
But it's been in the budget at 0.
Pardon?
It's been in the budget at 0, right?
The appropriate line item that would apply to the.
Yeah.
It's like a technical correction.
Still, I don't know, so did the line item in our roof go down?
I'd have to get back to you on that one. I'm not sure. There's been a lot of deductions on different line items.
Came from somewhere, right? You paid it out of from some, whether it's unused salary.
Well,
My guess is.
it may not, because it's a DSR 4, it's separate from the base. So I would just have to go through the deductions in the line items that.
No,
are
but
part of
what,
it.
where the expense was in last year's, in this year's budget, where's the expense?
In this year's budget, you gave me, was that out of the, the, oh yeah, oh, here it is, on here.
So in the past, we've had to do things like estimate the cost of a database at a certain increase if we never know until the invoice actually comes through. So in the past couple of years, we've been pulling together drips and drabs from leftover accounts where the expense wasn't exactly what we had anticipated. So rather than turning money back and not having the website, we paid for the maintenance.
Okay, I think it sounds like it, in my mind, it sounds like it just should be in the budget as an expense, you know. Not necessarily a DSR four. If it's an ordinary expense that, you know, they change from year to year for whatever reason, based on needs. There's
But
lots of line
supporting your
items in every
it's
department.
supporting your website
Right.
on an annual basis, so it's an annual operating expense.
Right, but part of this issue. I understand is that when the library moved forward to create its own website. The Friends and the Foundation paid for its creation, and there was an agreement that the Friends would pay for the annual maintenance of the website. I learned that after submitting this, and so
Oh, so they're gonna continue to pay for this. So this DSR four is a moot point, because it sounds like the Friends are gonna pay for the maintenance. of
we
the website.
haven't, I think the first year they did, but then they haven't, we, you know, scrounged together leftover expense line item monies to pay for it. So it's a DSR four because the proper line item for this money had 0 in FY 25, so that's why I put it forward as a DSR four.
You know, every other department's got changes in different line items because of changes in whatever's going on on an annual basis. There's no reason, in my mind, there's just no reason why this wouldn't be like that. You would just be an addition to your overall expense.
But I would agree with Barry. I think it should be in the budget unless I'm missing something.
So what I'm looking at is the FY 25 budget for the year we're in right now. The total amount of expenses is $428,000. The proposed budget for FY 26 has that amount at $456,130. So it's an increase of $27,000. So the question is, within that increase of $27,000 from 428 to 456. Why isn't this 4,855 a part of that?
Or in addition to.
Or in addition to that, or
This is just reading the instructions. To me, it read as if this, because the line item was 0, that it is a DSR four to put new money into a line item that had 0.
Sorry.
That was my, that was my
No.
thinking.
A DSR four is requesting funding for something that is not being funded currently. If it's an expense that was being paid, but it was in the wrong line, a department has the right to change the line item. And you would show one line going down because you just reallocating the funds from one expense number to another. What the history is on this is the library was part of the town website. And it was the library trustees who wanted to spin off and have their own website. And with that was gonna be additional cost, which the town didn't understand why they wanted to incur the additional cost. Because it was all covered under the fee that the town pays to Civic Plus. They made some convincing arguments and it was agreed that they had a funding source. They're one of the few departments that has a support group that was willing to pay for the program with the understanding that the website was going to be supported by these fees. And that if they were ever to seek to add it to the budget and be paid from the budget, it would have to be a DSR4 because it was not something that was authorized to the budgetary process. And they had the ability to fund something that most other departments would never have the ability to do. So that was why it would be a DSR4. I think perhaps there might be a confusion of what account number that was being charged, because when donations are given from the foundation, there are gift accounts and such, and if it's being paid, it could be against the gift account, the number. So that might be a confusion there.
Thanks. Any other questions? Great. Thank you very much. And if you could send in the information on the state aid and the
Yep.
trust funds.
Yeah,
That's
those plans.
right, and
Yeah.
expenditures.
Shall I send that
Just send it to Molly.
Molly? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And
Congratulations, welcome.
yeah,
Thank you.
and finally, Park and Rec. And Stacy is
Yes. And you. No, that's fine. Hi, Stacy. Tina and I met with Stacy probably a month ago now. And actually, the first time in a few years, I'd say this budget is pretty benign with very few, from the expense side, limited changes. There's a total increase, mostly salary related of 2.9% in the overall budget of about $47,000 in total. Tracy can go into more detail, but for the most part, there was a slight adjustment in staffing where an admin was moved up to an analyst position. And some expense items actually were moved around within the budget to more properly because mostly due to pool maintenance, that's all outsourced. So it's in a, most of those items went from, were moved into get the Stacy, which line item is that? Into the professional and technical line item. But overall, you know, expense changes were also pretty modest. Staffing, for the most part, is stable. I think the pool is sort of on a, I'll let Stacy elaborate, but the pool is operating sort of on a steady basis, I guess. This last year wasn't a whole lot of change and not a whole lot of change anticipated for this year. I think the biggest issue is how long they can have staffing to keep the pool open and how late they can keep the pool open. As I think most of you know, the summer programs that they all run go through the revolving fund and don't necessarily go through this budget. They're all self-funded. And continue to grow to the extent that they can have staffing and space to hold the programs. I know they're excited about our new tennis courts, which will allow them to increase programming there. And I think this is just a high level. I'll let Stacy want to elaborate in anything in particular.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Perfect. So basically this year I spent a lot of time trying to make sure we were adjusting the budget line items so that the correct bills were coming out of the correct line items. So at the bottom line, we're a pretty low increase, but you know, if you look at repairs and maintenance and DPW and professional and tech, it looks like there's some big jumps, but really we just put things in the spaces that they should actually be. As far as camp and pool, both feel strong. Barry, when we met not that long ago, I was feeling strong about our staffing, and now for our seasonal staff, we're a little concerned. So we've been pretty lucky for the last 4 years in getting staff and lifeguards, and this year it's looking a little bit slower. So if anybody's interested in the room that wants to be a lifeguard, please feel free to reach out. If you have any friends or family, let us know. But the numbers coming in are slower. So, you know, I'm still confident. It's just I would rather have the staffing earlier than later because I don't like to hire in May. I like to hire in, you know, February, but we'll get there. And we had a big meeting with our contractor for the pool yesterday actually about trying to get the pool open earlier this year and maybe even a little bit later, depending on staffing, of course. Even with some modified hours for maybe just lap swimming, while school's still in session. We open full 7 days a week once school's out of session, because many of our lifeguards are high school students, so we kind of have to wait for them to get out of school. But before that, we're going to try some limited hours, and the same thing at the end of the season. So our camps will run again similarly to last year. The only thing that won't run, ironically, is the tennis camp. So we will put that one on hold for 1 year and then come back with a bang in 26. So overall, everything's going well. The one change that Barry was alluding to is we had an admin specialist, and we upgraded that position to an admin analyst position. And that just means that Nikki with him, who has joined us, works a lot more with helping with procurement and contracts, because a lot of our things were more and more of our programs and supplies are requiring those kinds of things. So if anybody has any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. But yes, for the first time since I started, this is under 3% increase overall. So
Stacy, is there or what is the regulatory the mandate for kid to lifeguard ratio? Or is there one?
It's person to lifeguard. So it's 1 to 25, and that is in the water. So we have a unique pool. We have a actual 14 guard rotation. Many pools around us have like a 3 to 5 guard rotation. So we rotate our staff every 15 minutes because it's hot and it's hard to stay focused. So we need about 18 lifeguards per shift, and we operate with a 3-shift schedule. So overall, we need about 50 to 60 lifeguards. And like I said, the last few years, we've been very lucky. Our colleagues have been very upset with us. But I think this year we have to do a little bit more digging for some of those staff members and trying to get out there, because we're hitting a stage where we've got a good crew of kids that are going on past college or getting internships this year.
Do you maintain the same amount of staff throughout your programming hours? So like from whatever time you open to close?
No, so the morning hours are we have a smaller shift. We only have about 6 staff members. Let me rephrase that. We only have 6 lifeguards because we also have 6 or 7 swim instructors at the same time in the morning. In the very, very early hours, we only have a few lifeguards because it's just lap swimming that early. So we do alternate, but when we talk about in the height of the day, it's about a 9-hour shift. So we split it in 2. And then we also have weekend shifts, and very, very few of our staff want to actually work 40 hours. So, you know, for however many shifts, we need multiple kids in there. Most of our staff work somewhere around 20 hours a week.
So is there a P and L that you create for the pool, which would show us the fees that came in from the pool on the one side, and then what we spent on expenses, both in staffing the pool and maintaining the pool?
I can certainly pull that report with my staff for you. I don't have that at my fingertips, but I'm happy to pull that, certainly.
And could you get that? I'd just like to see what. So another for this past year, and then what you're projecting for this coming summer. In a sense, what that P and L would look like for the overall operation of the pool. To see where it's on the expense side and the income side.
Do we operate at a loss with the pool or are we?
Yeah.
Yes, decent amount.
Yes.
What about the summer programs? Are those net
Yes.
positive?
John, do you want to run that P and L with or without Salsa Gate? Because I think that's an anomaly that hopefully won't happen again.
Without what?
Salsa Gate.
Salsa Gate.
I'll leave that to you, Stacy. And
Right.
then have you set your fees for the coming year, for the summer coming up?
Yep, actually, we're keeping our memberships status quo. We saw a decline in memberships, but an increase in daily fees. And it's actually a whole lot easier financially to run the pool with our memberships are up and our daily fees are lower. So we're doing a little bit of an adjustment. Commission just voted on the fees, and we're gonna just roll that out. Hopefully by February vacation, that brochure will go out.
And on the people who use the pool, on membership fees or daily fees, is there a different fee for a Needham resident versus a non-Needham resident?
Yes, for both memberships and daily fees, there's a resident fee and a non-resident fee.
So you can then track from that, how many of the people who use the pool during the year were Needham residents versus non-Needham residents?
Yes.
And where is that information? Where can I find that?
It's in our database, our software system, our MyRec software system, so you can't find it, but I can get it for you. Well, really, my staff that knows how to use it better than I can, they can pull it for you.
Do you know what the breakdown is off the top of your head?
For memberships,
For like
Usage.
resident to non-resident usage?
I would say it's 70% Needham residents and then 30 non-residents, and most of our non-residents come in on the weekends.
Do you look at comparative market rate, what it would cost for someone to go to a pool for a day and how our fees compare
Yeah, so
for
So-
non-residents specifically?
So Massachusetts is a Park and Recreation Association, so we, all of my colleagues belong, like, all the different neighboring towns, and so there's actually, within the association, there's an aquatics division. And so I reach out to the aquatics division or work with Hannah, who's the assistant director, within the association to find out what we do a survey of like, what are your rates? If you have a pool, if you have a lake, if you have a pond, if you're guarded, if you don't have lifeguards. So there is a lot of data out there, so we kind of base it on those things. Now, our pool is significantly different than most of the pools around us. And a lot of our close neighbors actually have a lot of ponds or lakes that they're guarding versus pools. So we do get market rates from around the area.
And one other question. Do you so I heard you say that you'd rather have membership than people coming on the weekends because or just whenever they want to, because it's more stable. Do you look at the data in terms of like how often can you track how often a family or somebody might come and look at, okay, on average, someone comes 4 times a year or 6 times a year and sort of look at where the breakdown is. So if you increase the daily rate to a certain amount to make it so that the tipping point is close to what the membership would be, then you're actually are you analyzing that?
Right, and
Okay.
actually, if I could speak to.
Yeah.
So the commission looked at that very recently with the staff, and we wanted to push people, we want to push them to memberships.
Right.
Or a season pass as opposed to daily rate, so we have increased the daily rate and we're gonna drop by a little bit
the family pass from last year in hopes of getting more people to come. But if we have a bad summer, if we have bad weather, if we had some issues where we were closed for salsa and whatever, and then that tends to drive Right. our, attendance down, we wanna drive it back up. So- Cause I mean, we come to the pool and I would just say from personal experience, that's how we had membership. But Yeah, it's closed, like you only have so many weekends in the year, so you count them and you're like, okay, it costs this, so. Looking at that, I think you can figure out where the breaking.
Right, and
point
that's
is
what
if
we
you're
looked
trying-
at, and we
yeah.
used to offer people, if you came so many daily. On a daily pass, we would give you something off if you wanted to then jump up to a membership. We said, we're not gonna do that anymore. It's too much work. We don't wanna have people limit when they come. So we're hoping that what we've done with the pricing this coming summer will encourage people to buy a season pass.
And you sell the passes to out of town residents.
You can
as
buy a
well.
non-resident pass, yes.
Are there many non-resident members or?
Well, Stacy said 70-30. I actually
No,
would guess
no,
it
she's
was.
talking about memberships though.
Usage, she was saying.
You're talking about
I'm
you talking-
talking about actual memberships, not usage. So like, is
Oh,
it Needham residents that are members?
It is mainly Needham residents, I would say. Would you, Stacy? Yeah.
yeah, for people that buy the season passes, I would say we have about 30 non-resident families versus 450 resident families. So, you know, as far as who buys the passes, it's skewed way more residential.
Any other questions? Great. Stacy, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
staying on the line.
Good to see you,
Thank you
Stacy.
very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Cindy.
Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you. Quiet year for us.
I know. Oh, my gosh.
Um. So. We will have a meeting next week to finish up, what we missed last week, and I will be distributing just like a spreadsheet that looks at the budget recommendations and the town manager budget recommendations, so that hopefully next week we should be able to vote the budget, right?
We'll have a discussion on it.
Or have a discussion on it.
Yeah.
What are the time, Dave,
Yeah.
remember the
You,
reminders of
you,
time frame?
you have two more meetings.
I do,
You do have two more meetings that you can get done, so you probably won't start your conversation
next week.
next week, so you can finalize. Your preliminary recommendations at the following meeting.
Okay,
When's the preliminary warrant?
Due to, preliminary warrants, a few weeks off. The preliminary recommendations from the finance committee are due February 22nd.
that's
So-
just the small letter, not the,
The small, not the, not the major.
okay.
Yeah.
And then when will we get a first draft of the warrant?
It's. Maybe it's school vacation week, I guess. 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, so, because after next week. There's no other budget departments that we need to come in, but we'll at least have a first draft of the warrant that we can start on.
That's my guess, it'll be, you know, bare bones. In terms of, but you potentially there's some of the housekeeping articles you probably
Yeah.
get away and.
When is
you can work
vacation
with all
week?
of that.
Yeah, when is school vacation?
It's the 17th through the 21st. I
Ooh,
believe.
so we can't really meet the 19th,
Yeah.
right?
There's no legal reason you can't.
I mean,
No, I know.
Town hall is open, right? I
Right,
mean,
no, I'm just saying we traditionally, yeah.
I know we traditionally haven't, but is there,
Who here has kids in school? I mean, me.
well,
I don't.
Tina does.
Well, no, right, I mean. I will be
I
away,
will.
but I could try to come.
I'm not
I'll
away.
be away.
I'm not away.
Are you awake, Tina?
Yeah,
You got kids for all intents and purposes.
Because we can't really wait until the 26th.
Right, that's the issue.
So. And I feel like we need to have a discussion before we can vote the budget, so I think we still need to have a meeting on the 19th
Is that the meeting to discuss the budget and then vote it?
to vote the budget.
Or vote the budget.
I can call.
You can, okay,
I will try my best. I don't have very good service in Vermont, so.
okay, you know what, try your best, but we should have a quorum. You can call in, like, we should have a quorum.
And I'm not, I won't be here physically next week. For a meeting, but I will definitely call in.
Okay, great. Any other updates?
The Envision Needham Center Study Committee. The pilot plan that they're going to run when they start it is going to have to run for 4 seasons, as in seasons.
Meaning like,
Yeah, exactly what you're thinking.
yeah,
Or at least 9 months of it in touching the seasons. The town has received a grant from the Department of Transportation. One of the asides on that is that in order to use the grant, the town has to shrink the amount of streets and roadways. So think, as I said before, think 4 lanes on Great Plain Ave from Pickering down to Nahoyden, going to 1 lane in each direction with an expanded sidewalk and bike lanes and planters. That's just where I see it.
Yeah.
and
They're doing boards this weekend.
They are going to do an outreach. It was supposed to be starting tomorrow,
Right.
but they postponed it because of the weather
Yeah.
to Monday. But they're still going to do walking tours of the town center this weekend and ask town people what they envision Needham Center to be.
Are they gonna ask people in cars what they think?
We'll see, won't we? I don't know.
They'll just run over the people that are.
Yeah.
walking.
But as I said, the town is, in order to take the grant, the town is committed to implementing a road diet. So
but is that just for the grant period? Or like, what is the,
that's they, basically, I think they have to shrink the road. That's what the 360 is for, the 320 is for. But in addition to the $320,000 grant, it's, the town has to also then kick in an additional 20% match. I don't know where that's coming from yet.
For the pilot or for the like, we don't have any idea on the funding if this project moves forward, right?
Right. So. We'll see.
20%.
I mean, I'm the only person in the room asking financial questions. The rest of it
But
is
is this like a
deciding on
go?
colors. For the banners.
but is the street diet being, grant being provided by
The federal government.
federal government?
Federal
But I
government.
think some of the money for this is, if I recall,
It's not the,
no, but it's
It's coming out of
like
the,
chapter 90 funds, not nine,
no, this one is coming out of the act that, the bipartisan infrastructure act. That's where the 320 is coming from.
So they
And
don't,
evidently, Kara says that, you know, relative to costs involved in piloting it, that'll be town funds or her funds. I don't know about that either. So,
Pilot program would have to be town funds.
yeah,
the pilot program would be?
Yes, for what the map, if we have a match, that would have to be town funds, couldn't be chapter 90.
Okay.
for the
so,
construction.
Construction could be, and that's, I think that's one of the primary funding sources they're looking at.
Right.
But depending on what the total cost would be, there may be the local taxation out.
Paul, are there or will be discussions as part of this, bringing in, for example, police and fire and what their requirements are for space
I
for
think
their,
absolutely.
okay,
I think
so,
absolutely.
so that's one question.
Yeah.
So that will also be a component of it. How about with respect to, a reduction of parking spaces and what effect that might have on businesses, and people with respect to, they rely on it to meet their parking quota. For different things, is that one of the items that's gonna be looked at as well? I'm afraid of like the utopia, if something looks really good on
Yeah, I know.
paper, but isn't practical.
That hasn't been spoken to.
I think there's people from the planning board that are on it.
There are.
But there was
We
a
did parking
whole
study.
parking survey done that concluded there is believe it or not, an
Excess amount of parking in town.
What? There is an excess?
I think
Yeah.
there's also been discussion of better signage to try to direct
Right.
people more easily to where the excess of parking is, right? And the idea is to get less cars driving down Great Plain. I don't know if the drivers will like that,
Look
but
at
that's
that.
the idea, I think, is to circumvent that the center should be more for walkable placemaking and drivers should go around it.
It's a state route, I mean, it's Route 135.
Yes, it is.
No,
Yes, it is.
it's not gonna get eliminated, it's not, but it make some people use it totally as a drive-through.
Will they prohibit certain types of vehicular traffic?
I don't think
I
so.
don't
I
think
think
so.
they're looking at ideas of like, you can't take turns in certain places.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen one schematic where, I think I said this at the last meeting, where when 135 comes into Needham Center from Dedham. Where you basically have a nice angle right onto, Highland Ave. They're talking about moving that directionally so there's not a straight shot. And putting in like a little mini park to the left. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff flying around in this.
Or
On the left-hand side to keep an open mind. I'm
Yeah.
trying to. But I knew I'd come to this crowd and not get the other side. of it. No, I'm not.
Well, and then how about, it will also be a part of this where they'll look at if traffic's diverted, what side streets, what
Yeah.
other streets are gonna be
That,
affected.
that has to be part of it.
Yeah,
I think that's the
Absolutely.
point of the pilot, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Is to
That's what the
see
pilot is
how
gonna be for.
it
So people will come down May Street or come down Warren Street
right,
to avoid coming into
Oh,
Needham
yeah.
Center to skirt
Yeah.
over
Oh, yeah.
that direction.
You do wide circles
Right.
around the center as opposed to.
People, over time, habits will change. It's like when, we
Right.
added the schools on Central Ave and to the extent. It does cause some people to change their commuting habits.
One of the admissions I did here as an aside is that the procurement process will likely slow this down. So. Anyway, but that's the envisioned Needham Center study.
when is so if the pilot goes through
They're
what 4 seasons, when would
They
the
were talking-
construction or the actual, like, what budget year are we looking at here?
Certainly not FY 26,
Right.
but beyond that, who knows?
You'll be
As I
chair of the
said,
finance committee.
And so if they started,
I keep messing.
and this is like pie in the sky, if they started late this spring, which is what they want to do. You're talking early winter to turn it off. So, or to say, we've done our 4 seasons. So it's,
And you think they can start that quickly?
But I mean, I'm behind the 8 ball, but this is like already a done deal. The money's already been allocated. Something is gonna be done to make changes.
No, that's
Oh.
why they have to go to this.
Right, okay.
The pilot, though, they have the pilot.
They have the money for the pilot.
For the pilot, okay.
That's right.
No, listen, I guess if it's a disaster, we won't do it, and won't, or think differently about it, but
It certainly will get people's attention.
Yeah.
The pilot, because everybody will see it, right?
People on Warren Street especially.
I mean, the drawings look very beautiful.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
That's what they're supposed to do.
And what will, the safer, quieter medium remediation, will that be tied into this at all?
they probably not, it probably has nothing to do with.
They,
But it goes down there.
yeah.
Which
they
seems
are
completely
definitely-
illogical. 'Cause
They're
that's gonna
definitely
affect
talking to
traffic
each
too.
other, like, I feel like they've discussed, like, because I've listened to 1 or 2 of the meetings, I know that they've referenced that.
So
All right, well, thank you.
Stay tuned.
for
No,
your
thank you
service.
for this.
It's that in Florida, so this is far more exciting.
And Carol, we had a meeting, with the general bylaw committee. And we were all kind of assigned a section to go through, and to then kind of present back. What we thought with an addition of kind of having a checklist of things we were all looking for, like archaic language, you know, all that sort of stuff. But then also to present any issues that we might think. Maybe a problem or need to be addressed, while also kind of considering how they're linked to each other, each of the different sections, some of them might be. So I do think it's gonna be a comprehensive kind of. You know, review and then kind of a chipping away at some of the things that need to be changed. But I think some of the stuff that was brought up. In the meeting originally was, you know, kind of discussion about gender neutrality language and certain things like that, that we're just gonna have to all discuss a little bit more about how that works and. Moving to like electronic paperwork sort of stuff and understanding why that might not work for every situation and all that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Joe, you want to talk about the meeting we went to yesterday?
Yeah, quickly,
But it's really, it's gotta, be a bigger discussion, obviously, when we get the warrant, but.
yeah, we talked about it, I think. In some earlier meetings about the challenges that we have with our billing system around. You know, tax bills, et cetera, and so really. The existing software seems to have not a future forward, and really the right choice is to. Look at replacing that and converting to a new system. So there's already been some, you know, additional thought, but that would go out. To get bids in and look at the criteria.
It's basically a whole new software system.
Yep.
That would be a big capital expense. And an initial significant operating expense that ultimately will be offset when we start paying the licenses for the software that we currently have, which it's only 2-3 years old.
Right,
It's
but was there and I forgot, a significant set of costs associated with that one?
Not as, not significant, it's still money that we've sunk in. It's under $300,000. Let's get doing the math, because that was one of the questions asked. A lot of that original appropriation is still reserved for the intended purpose. We have the old system that we have to archive everything that's in there 30 years worth of records. Has to be, because we can't ever, they're all permanent records.
Right.
And of course, it was always cheaper to keep everything on the computer system, but now now that we're looking to decommission it. We have to get all that data off in usable form. State law still requires it to be in print, but we also need a practical solution to make it searchable on some electronic.
The law requires 30 years in print
No, the law just requires all public records to be in print.
forever.
If it depends what type of record it is, some records have 3 years, 7 years, 10
Yeah.
years,
Okay.
100 years, but.
100 years.
But
Birth
So when did we-
certificates, death certificates.
Very,
I mean,
the current software we use, when did we select it?
When did we select it? I think.
2022.
5
And we don't
years.
have a
6 last-
contract that protects us against like non-performance or something, if we're having to move because it's not working.
There, yeah, there was
There was some
an attorney-
discussion about that.
They're looking into that, but the issue is, we're highly dependent on them for just day-to-day functionality.
I mean, right now.
Right now, so like the treasurer was commenting, Lisa's been here 9 months, 11 months. And she's got 3,000 emails to this, trying to get problems solved with
Just
various
between her
items.
and the vendor.
Between her and the vendor.
There
So-
should be some like non-performance clause in the contract that they're.
Of course, but they're dependent on them just to get answers, and run reports that they have to do, so. It's a sort of a delicate,
Balance.
listen, you'd love to say screw you, and go, but you really can't, because you need them to pick up the phone.
No, I mean, it's sort of a necessary evil, but I guess my question is, and not that it's answered tonight, but going forward.
Right.
is, you know, are there lessons learned?
Oh, yeah,
from
no,
before?
yeah.
And how do we make sure we don't make the same mistake again? Because, you know, if
We
those
went-
guys were the shining lights and 3 years ago.
We went, apparently, and obviously nobody here was involved in the decision on, but it was a significant, it came in significantly lower from a price standpoint and just didn't deliver on everything. And it sounds like almost anything that they had promised. And we're one of the few customers in Massachusetts. I think that's part of the problem. They're predominantly in Connecticut and.
Do they serve 100% municipalities? Like,
Yeah,
is it government?
it is.
Yeah. government stuff.
Okay.
The only other thing, it is more than just the replacement of the revenue package. So the other lesson learned is trying to buy systems. Some of the great problems are the talking with different systems such as the general ledger, which is a different software system. Talking with the printing services, which is a different party, is we need an enterprise-based operation. So this is looking not only to purchase a replacement for the revenue package, but also all the financial, the general ledger, payroll, accounts payable. The system that we have is also dated. It's served its purpose. It's been in place now for 10, and we're actually in the 11th year. It is a time to start looking at, so
This is for the general ledger.
in the general ledger and such. So that's the other major component to this cost. So the going forward is, the other lesson learned is you want a complete package and not try to make
The
the multiple vendors to try to get them all to talk to one another. It doesn't work well.
So for this decision, it will be comprehensive.
Comprehensive, yeah. There are a couple of firms that are widely used and
That's why
apparently
we're gonna pay a lot.
with what?
That's why we'll pay a lot of money.
And sometimes the low-cost producer is
Right.
the way.
Well, that's
Right.
part of the lesson.
No, I know.
learned.
You gotta go to the big guy.
Does
something like this produce information like reports that you run and things like that, or
Oh,
is this just a repository? Okay.
Oh, no. it's
No.
Most everything. Give you this stuff.
Right, okay,
I
right.
rely on these systems
Right.
and it's difficult.
And once you make a decision, like, what's the period of implementation?
It will be, 9 to 24 to 30 months. And software conversions are time consuming. And,
Well, for the amount of information.
yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
information, conversion process, the learning curve. The setting up, but I've been through many
Yeah.
conversions over my career, both private and public sector, and they've all been time intensive and time.
Yeah, there was some discussion that you didn't necessarily want to time it to go mid fiscal year.
Right, we want to have the timing, so there's different phases
Yeah.
that there's optimal times to do certain billings. Because you really don't want the same billing period to be split between systems, because you just increase your likelihood of errors. Such as the tax bills, you want to generate the first tax bill for the fiscal year. For the July 1st start date.
Yeah.
Ideally with water and sewer bills, you want to start. Ideally start of the calendar year, but if not that, the start of a quarter, certainly, you don't want to start in, don't start. Fifth month of the year, because because the entire town is billed 4 times a year. And if you're splitting the cycles of 1 quarter between 2 different systems, it becomes problematic. So there's optimal times to make these conversions. So that also adds to the implementation time.
But all in, it's like a $2 million year.
1,999,95.
So with that, I'll move to adjourn.
Yes, we second.
All in favor? Thank you. So just
big, with like another $2 million.
municipality, yeah.
So they're gonna tax.
No.